and I'll do a little intro. This is the Inside Selling Podcast, a podcast about selling without selling your soul, where we take a look at selling, but from the buyer's perspective, not the seller's perspective. Today on the show, oh my goodness, are you in for a treat? I had the pleasure of meeting Patricia at Unleash 19, which is this sales shindig on some island in San Diego. I know, poor us. And I was really impressed by the work that she is doing to help companies craft outreach in such a way that breaks through the noise and gets a response rather than gets deleted. So Patricia, thank you so much for carving out the time to chat today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure meeting you at Unleash. That seemed like a dream of a conference. And, some of the conversations that we've had and just meeting and connecting in such a beautiful space was amazing.
Listen, most of the conversations we had have to stay at Unleash, but we can talk about some of them. We can't disclose all conversations. But Patricia, take us back. Like, you are doing some interesting work now. But yeah. I want to go back a little bit. Why did you decide to start this company? What problem were you seeing out there in the marketplace that you wanted to help solve?
Yeah, so I started Copy Shop pretty recently, and it spun out of a conversation with Manny, the CEO of Outreach. And the problem that their customers were having was around content. These sales engagement platforms are super powerful, but it's only as good as the content that you're putting into the platform, right? So they needed help. They wanted support with the actual quality of the messages that they were sending out to prospects. And all of last year, I had written sales campaigns for tons of companies across tons of industries, from construction, finance, sales, marketing, pretty much every industry and every kind of persona. And I started to notice patterns and, different things in the messaging that generates an actual response. And so what better way to partner with Outreach and SalesLoft and these amazing sales engagement platforms and provide that service, create an actual framework that their customers can use to get better responses with their customers.
Before we get into your secret sauce, what were some of the things that you saw and that you continue to see when you review cold outreach and specifically cold emails? What are some of the mistakes that you see people are making, some of the traps people fall into? Are there some gotchas that you typically see?
Yeah, I mean, we all know that, some people say cold outreach is dead, cold calling's dead, cold emailing is dead, but I think really it's just mindless outreach that is really dead, and we see it in almost every cold email. You can spot the template from a mile away. They're copying and pasting these generic templates with, here's an opening sentence, 3 bullet points, call to action. It's not plucking at any emotional string. It doesn't relate. It's not relevant to the prospect. So why would they respond? It just goes in the trash. So it's not standing out in their inbox of hundreds that look exactly the same. And now personalization is so crucial, but there's a right and a wrong way to do it. And I think it takes more than a 5-minute search on LinkedIn. It takes more than a 5-minute Google search. We have to be a little bit more creative in our approach and really try to pluck on that emotional string to drive a decision-making process on the prospect's end.
Yeah, I mean, it's never been easy to send out communications, and it's never been harder to break through and book a meeting. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about something else that I'm seeing, and I'm curious to get your perspective on this. We talk about response rates of cold email, typically in the 4 or 5%, and we kind of pound our chest like, I got a response. But what we're not talking about a lot is the 96% of the people that aren't responding and what you're doing to your addressable market when you start to create first impressions that are negative or bad or make people feel nothing at all. Mm-hmm. Talk to me a little bit about your perspective on the negative implications of these generic, templatized, Mad Lib style, fill in the blank, as you put it, are mindless, outreaches. We're kind of doing mass.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough to bounce back from that. First impressions are everything. And I know, on the receiving end, if I get an email that the prospect didn't take the time to understand my work or my space, or didn't try to be relevant, then I'm just going to disregard that. And then every communication beyond that point, so that first impression is really important. And in order to get that response or to pique that interest, we have to use emotion. People, the first thing that people do is use emotion to drive their decisions. And then after that, they use information to reinforce that decision. So it's kind of like an act now, think later. And instead of trying to sell yourself or sell your company in that first email, you're just trying to sell the time to get them on the phone. You're not trying to sell your product, feature, blast the features and benefits out. Just pique their interest, pique their emotion, get them on the phone, and then sell the rest, in that hour with the rest of your sales cycle.
Yeah, I talked about this in my session. The way I like to think about it, and curious to hear your thoughts on this as well, is I think when you send cold outreach to your prospects, they're secretly asking themselves 4 questions. And in order for you to get their time, the prospect has to answer yes to these 4 questions. And so the first question they ask themselves when they hear from you for the first time is, should I pay attention to you? And to your point, Patricia, if you are a white circle in a sea of white circle emails, just because you look the same, the brain ignores the pattern because it wants to focus on things that are more important. It's why we don't pay attention to every car while we're driving. And if the answer to that is no, you don't get to go to step 2. I'm assuming you are able to get my attention. The second question, again, to your point is, do I like this person? Like the first words that I read, we've all had this experience where we meet someone at a party like you. I met you at Unleash, and instantly, I'm not telling tales out of school here, I just liked you from the first 5 minutes. You were personable. And I think people get that feeling when they read your copy too. And if they're reading something that feels robotic and stiff and corporate-y and I don't understand it, the answer to that second question is no. And you don't get to go to the third question, which is, can you help me do something better or solve a problem I have? And then when you get past that, it's, are you credible? And so I think we think about this often from the seller's perspective, but I think to your point, thinking about this from the buyer's perspective, and what are the questions they're asking themselves, and how do we craft our emails in such a way that we can get through those filters so that we can prompt an attention. So do you use some type of a framework? You keep talking about emotion, and I've heard this before, but do you think about when you craft these emails, do you use a sort of framework, or how do you think about this when you approach these communications?
So it takes a lot of brainstorming and a lot of creativity, and not everything usually sticks on the first try. So in order to do, to pluck that emotional string, we have to, again, put ourselves in the buyer's shoes. So there's a lot of research that goes into who we're reaching out to. So are they in sales? Are they in marketing? Are they in IT? What position are they in? What are their day-to-day activities? Who do they interact with? What are their challenges? What do they sound like when they're complaining? Who are they complaining to? And what do they care about outside of work? What kind of skills and personality traits do they have? What emotions are they feeling throughout the day? And what dominant emotion do we want to kind of use along the way in our messaging? Like, what do we want to pluck at here? What do we want to focus on? What does our product speak to the most? So we do a lot of brainstorming around that. And once we pick that emotion,
how do we get to that though? This is a problem that I see out in the marketplace. Salespeople have never done the job of the person that they're actually selling to. And so what I often see are guesses as to what we think the job is that our prospects are trying to get done. And oftentimes the lingo of the salesperson is very different than the lingo of the actual customer. So if you're a salesperson, we get this marketing message, save time and money or something else generic. And the people that we're speaking to don't sound like that. So what is your process that you go through to get closer to the voice of the customer so that you can use their secret language in your outreach?
So we have a couple different things, and just from working across so many industries and speaking to so many different titles and personas, our team has come up with these buyer persona profiles for each kind of industry and each kind of persona. And so that's what we use as kind of the foundation. And it has, what is their role within a company? Who do they interact with? What are the typical challenges? What are the typical roles and responsibilities of this person? And then when we kind of tie in a specific product or service, we can tweak and we can try and add in a little bit more detail into what they're actually doing for that company, make it a little bit more relevant for that company in that industry. But we have these personas already built out, just from our experience and our expertise in the space. So we start there.
How did you get that? How did you get those? Did you interview people? Because I would imagine you've never been an IT person,
I haven't.
So when you originally were doing this work, and for people that are maybe trying to DIY this, how did you get that in the beginning? I would imagine you had to talk to people, interview people, shadow people to kind of get closer to them and understand their language.
Yeah, we had to talk to people. It's a crazy concept.
Yeah, you actually had to talk to customers and understand.
Yeah.
What were they struggling? Yeah.
Yeah. What are their challenges really? Why did they sign on with a particular product or service? Is this an email they would actually respond to? And so we looked at the types of responses we were getting in each space, and we kind of saw what was working and what was not, and how we could scale that, or what aspects of that would work across industry or across persona. We also leverage our own network. We have a panel of experts of each persona, and we just shoot it off to them and say, hey, is this something that you would actually read? Is this something that would resonate with you? Did we miss the mark? Are we using words and industry jargon correctly? Is there anything that you would change in this email? And that gives us a ton of perspective into the space, but we're getting it straight from the horse's mouth. Like, would you respond to this? Yes or no? And then we have a little bit more confidence when we actually launch this campaign for our customers.
I love that. Something else that you said that I want to talk a little bit about before we talk about emotions. And this is a tricky one because I want people to understand what this is. And I might botch this, Patricia, but based on my understanding and speaking with you at Unleash, and I'll give you an example of what I perceive this as. So let's say, for instance, I have some grass that is burnt. And so the problem that I have is I have burnt grass, and the external problem is I want my grass to be green. But the emotion is I don't want to be that guy in the neighborhood where everyone drives by the yard and is like, God, dude, that Braun, he's got like the worst grass in the whole entire neighborhood. I want to be like, I want to be the guy like, oh my God, dude, Josh, how do you get that grass like so green? Is that what you're talking about in terms of the emotion? That's, I guess, the internal problem that I feel, which is different than the external problem of just getting the green grass. There's a feeling behind how this makes me feel when I have this problem. And I think, to your point, that's a deeper seated
for sure
feeling that I have, or am I botching that a little bit?
No, that's it. So everybody exists, right? Our companies exist to solve problems, and most of them are pretty generic. They fall under saving time, saving money, saving effort, right? So everyone can say, oh, we'll save you time. We save you significant time. But that's almost just a surface of saying, hey, I see that you are, VP of sales at this company. So everybody knows that that's why you're reaching out. You can solve for something. But what is that actual outcome giving that individual? Like, what is saving time really giving them? What are they going to do with that time? If it's something, if that time is blocking them from accomplishing any other activities, or maybe personally, what are they going to do with more time? Can they make it home in time to have dinner with their family, or whatever it is? There's another reason. There's a deeper reason why people want to do something and why they're reaching out or why they're going to talk to you. They see a value deeper than just that initial saving time, money, and effort. So that's a part of the brainstorming that we do. We sit there, we think, okay, somebody in this role, what else are they going through? We solve for X, but what does X give them? We just think of ideas, and again, we're throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. And we're constantly testing beyond that. So if we're getting a lot of responses, we're getting a lot of engagement, then we're going to use that and keep testing on what's working.
Yeah. I call this, something a little different. I call it, there are these generic messages that I get about saving time and money and that kind of stuff. And those are very generic and they don't resonate. But then there are these other ones that I think we're talking about where I call it crispy. There's a lot more detail behind it. Like by way of example, if I was selling, a product called Unshrink It, which is actually a real product that if you shrink a wool sweater in the dryer by accident, you put the stuff on it and it like restores it. Instead of saying, oh, we can save you money on your sweater if you shrunk it, it's like, have you ever had a wool sweater that was cashmere that you paid $325 for, and you wanted to wear it out and you accidentally put it in the dryer and it was ruined?
Yep.
That is like more crispy. And the thing that's tricky about this is you can't necessarily ask people why they bought something, because oftentimes they won't tell you. The best story I know about this is actually an interview we did with a customer that bought a night light for their book. And when we asked him, why'd you buy it? He said, well, just to read in bed at night. But when we dug a little deeper, we learned that the reason he bought the night light for his book was to save his marriage, because what was happening was he didn't want to wake his wife up, and he would leave the room at night and it was hurting their marriage. So what he really wanted was a night light that he could read at night without disturbing his wife so that she could sleep. And those are the nuggets. When you get those details, when you put those in the emails, those are the things that are going to resonate, because as famous copywriter James Collier says, you're kind of joining the conversation already happening in the prospect's mind. And so if you're a new SDR or you're a new AE, I guess your advice is we got to talk to people, because you've never done the job, and you've done this already, and you kind of have these universal truths that you're able to leverage for all these personas. You kind of have codified that already. You have that secret buying language. But if you're not working with Patricia, and I don't know why you wouldn't want to be working with her, but if you're doing this on your own, I think the takeaway from the first part of this interview is no amount of templates or fancy wrappers are going to solve the foundational problem of getting the customer's lingo into your copy. Okay, so we've got the customer's copy. What's the next part of the process?
So once we come up with the copy, and again, it takes just some creative brainstorming, just think a little bit deeper about it. Think about what your benefit is, and then, how that individual is really going to benefit beyond that first benefit, right? So how are you going to get crispy? So we create the campaigns, we send them off to our— Is there a
structure to this? Is there, I don't know if you feel comfortable sharing this, you can say no, but is there a structure to these emails? And I know at the same time, we're kind of saying we can't templatize this stuff, but I would imagine there is sort of a formula that you're using. Is that something you could share? Enlighten us a little bit on that? How
yeah. So most emails that we write are no more than 4 lines. 4 or 5 lines, because again, we have limited real estate here. We're not going to write a novel. We're not trying to sell our products. We're just trying to sell the meeting, and we're trying to be as short, concise, conversational as possible. So it's just a quick email that makes us seem human, 4 lines. And the first line is the emotion. It's driving the emotion home. So whatever we can do, whether it's a joke, humor,
give me an example if you could share. Share something with me, for sales, because I'm a sales guy. If something comes to mind, like any kind of sales, I would probably know. IT, I probably wouldn't, but anything that's top of mind.
So we just wrote a campaign recently in the healthcare space, and they spread information, a lot of information. They help with information, data privacy and things like that. And so we thought, okay, what spreads like information that would resonate in a healthcare setting? And we thought, okay, germs spread often. So germs spread just like information. And germs, where are germs most, prevalent, or where are a lot of germs found that it's outside of a healthcare setting? So we brainstormed and thought, okay, kids. So a kindergarten class. So our first line was something different. It was tying the data spread and data privacy to something that's relatable to them, and it's kind of funny. So we related spreading information like germs spreading in a kindergarten class. And so boom, line 1, right? And that's okay. You caught their—
Yeah, no, I want to stop you there too, because look what you did with that first sentence. We just talked about this before. That's going to be something that's going to pass that first question, which is actually the first 2 questions probably, which is, should I pay attention to this? That's something different, right? Mm-hmm. And then the second question is, that's going to make you feel something. That's going to make a percentage of the people smile in this case. And I think when you make people feel good, they want more of that drug.
Yeah.
And the more people that you make feel good, the more they're going to want to view, the more likely they are to want to talk to you. So I love that idea of being able to ladder in the problem with, as you put it, an emotion, in this case, humor.
Yeah.
So love that. And then from there, I guess you go to the third question they have, which is, do you have this problem that you can help me with? And then I guess from there, you kind of get into more.
Yeah. So the next one is addressing that problem, like being a little bit more supportive of that issue and showing them why it's a problem now. So it's either this is what you're going to feel, or this is what's going to happen if you don't sign, or, hey, we have a solution, depending on the emotion. Like if we're driving fear, right? That's a huge one in a lot of different personas, or like financial services, for example. Like we can really drive fear of spreading that information, or you're not secure, or whatever, solution you're solving for. But then that second line is, okay, here's what happens if you don't sign, or here's what happens if you do. We have the solution for you. The third line is just supporting that. Why you? And to your 4 questions, that's why you're credible. So why should they take your meeting to learn more? And then the last line is just a call to action. And I think the call to action in a lot of different companies and cold emails that I see are so long, and they're so wordy. And it's
like, what do you mean? Like, give me an example of a long and wordy call to action. Like, would you like to meet next Wednesday at 3 p.m.?
Let's connect. Can we connect Thursday or Friday to discuss improving your productivity and eliminating the, it's like they've read your email. They understand what you're going to solve for. So just ask a quick question, like, what are your thoughts? Or do you want to learn more on Friday? Boom. Right. You don't have to make it so wordy. It's a human conversation. So just
when Patricia's boyfriend asked her out on a first date, he was very succinct. It was a sentence. What I learned. I'm not going to get into the copy that he used, men out there that want to meet people. It's not for this show, but we just know it was a short call to action like that one sentence. I love it. Something else that I think you said that's really important that I see in terms of a mistake that I see people make is they'll personalize a first sentence. Hey, Josh, notice you went to Florida State, or go Seminoles. And then the second line will have absolutely nothing to do with like the first line. It's like, hey, I checked the box of love your podcast, this episode. And then the second question is something I usually don't understand. So the other thing that I think you did really masterfully here is, just like we learned when we were writing in elementary school, is that the main idea has to support the other paragraphs. There has to be some relation, to that as well. I want to get your thoughts on something else as well that I found too, is that oftentimes I have found that people aren't aware of problems they may have or what's possible. Mm-hmm. And the example that I typically give is there's a client that I'm working with actually right now, sales organization. And when I asked, if I would have asked the VP of sales, what's the problem you guys are bumping into? He's like, no, we're booking meetings. We're doing fine. Mm-hmm. But when I went there and observed the sales organization, I saw that the sales reps were doing this. They were writing an email in Outlook, sending the email, creating a task to follow up in Salesforce for 3 days later called T2. And then when that day came, they would go into their sent box, forward that email, and then forward the new email, then create a touch called T3. That's just how they've been doing it for the beginning of time. So if you ask them, do you have a problem? They would say no. Right. Until I said, are you aware of technologies that can automate that process so that your reps have more time to make calls? Because right now you're spending 300 hours per rep per year on this thing. And they're like, what are you talking about? So what is your perspective on that? Which is, sometimes we can't ask necessarily about problems. Sometimes we have to shine a light as salespeople in problems. And we're curious to hear your perspective on, I call it enlightening people, showing them what's possible, because I might not know what I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as salespeople, we all know that it's about timing, and sometimes they're just not ready to buy yet. And a lot of times it's because they don't see the issue as being so pressing right now. Maybe they see it as a challenge, but they don't see that they need to take action right now. And so a lot of the messaging can be used to place that action and show them, okay, as you read this email, for example, you say, as you read this email, this is what's happening. This is what you're missing out on, or this is what you could be missing out on if you don't take this meeting, or whatever, however you want to word it. But giving them that idea of urgency. So using messaging in that way to say, right now, or this is what you missed out on, or this is what is possible, is really a way to kind of pique their interest and at least get them on the phone to learn more. So it's all about using actionable words and supporting that with, how you actually go about solving that.
I love that. Yeah. It's really, I think to your point, not everybody knows that what they're currently doing is no longer safe potentially. And I think part of being a good copywriter is enlightening people that, hey, this is what could be lurking around the corner. This is what you might not know is possible. Something else I want to talk to you about, Patricia, which is a really big one. And I want to get your perspective on this because I'm super curious about how you think about it. I'd say, I'm not exaggerating, and I actually share something with you that actually just popped into my inbox as we're talking, seriously. So this is something that just popped into my inbox. Now. So this is actually just, this just popped in. And I'm not going to put anyone under the bus, or the name of this company, doesn't matter. But I get this all the time. So this is actually in my inbox. Hi, Josh. I help startups frustrated by driving business values across the CRM value chain to enable best-in-class solutions using Salesforce. And I wanted to schedule a meeting with you to share more details. So honestly, I'm in tech and I'm in sales, and I have no idea what that means. And when I was at Unleash and I asked people, what do you do? That's how most people sounded when I spoke to them at the networking event. And when I spoke to the vendors, that's how they sounded, most of them. I literally didn't understand what they did. How do we get out of this? How did this happen? How do we stop with the jargon? What are your tips? Because people don't talk like that outside of work. So something happens when we are in sales writing mode where we're using this language that I don't know. I honestly don't know what it means. How do we get clarity? I mean, I know this is a big topic, but do you have any tips on how to be more, and I know human is a word everyone uses. I don't know what the hell that means, but just like normal, like how a person would not actually talk like outside of work, like how you and I are talking now.
Yeah, I don't know when we made this shift, or if it's just because people want to sound more professional, or they want to sound more intelligent, or they're reaching out to C-levels, or whatever the case. It doesn't work. You lose their attention so quickly. They're not even finishing that sentence. And people are people. People want to have regular conversation. They are all influenced by the same kinds of things as you are. They like being entertained. They like humor. They like general conversation. So I would recommend, number one, reading your emails out loud. And if you get tripped up, if it sounds you personally can't get through the sentence, then start over. Sometimes it's difficult, or if it's too long, you feel like it's too long, it's not natural, then just stop, rewrite it how you would normally say it.
How do you get into normal mode? Like, are there tips? Write like you talk is something we always heard when we were coming up in creative writing classes. Are there things that as a copywriter, you could advise people on how to get a more conversational versus a formal tone? What are some tips you have? Or are there any? Like, how did we get there?
So I wrote an article about this recently to try to explain what you do as if you were talking to your grandma. So take that sentence. If you look at your website, or, if you're trying to come up with new messaging for your prospects, take that initial sentence and then try and not exactly dumb it down, but just simplify it to, an 8th grade reading level, or something that someone outside of your space would understand. So if you say, take out all of the adjectives as well. Adjectives can be, they can work against you sometimes. So world-class, proprietary, all of those words, just take those out and just
take out world-class and proprietary. What about, not end-to-end? End-to-end platform.
End should always stay.
Okay. Just want to make sure end-to-end, guys. Okay, so take that out. And what about this also concept that I've heard a lot, which is use versus eyes. Instead of saying, use the word Y-O-U. What is that about?
So that was the first thing that I thought of when you read that email to me, was he or she said, I do this. That's the first sentence. I do this. We don't care what you do or how you feel about something. So your reasons, I'm sorry, that was harsh, but
now you guys are getting a taste of the Patricia that I saw at Unleash. You're getting a little taste, just a little taste. No, go ahead. No, I know what you mean here. Keep going.
Love. So you have to turn it back around and put yourself in their shoes. And again, turn all the eyes, take all the eyes out, take your company name out, and just say you and your issue and your company, and this is why you, right? Because they get so many of those. And again, this is a cold email. They don't know you personally. They don't trust you yet. They don't have any relation to you. So why does your opinion matter? You don't have any credit yet. You have no reputation. You have no relationship with this person. So you have to turn it around again to what they care about, what resonates with them, what emotions are they feeling based on the challenges that they are having, and say you understand, say you're here to help offer solutions, and just pique their interest to get them on the phone. So turn all the eyes to use.
Turn all the eyes to use. I love it. Patricia, you have said it all, as I knew you would. Tell us a little bit about your company, and specifically now this is talk about putting someone on the spot. We've been talking about being clear, and now Patricia's being asked to actually give a little plug for her company, because if you are having the problem, notice I'm saying if you are having the problem of not getting the response rates that you want from your cold outreach, that's what you do, right? That's specifically what you do.
That's what I do. I help companies using sales engagement tools like Outreach and SalesLoft. I write content that delivers more conversations.
And it's as simple as that. And so Patricia, if people want to get a hold of you, if they want to learn more about you, if they want to talk to you, how do they do this?
They can find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you guys and chat. So Patricia McLaren, or you can check out copyshop.co, and it's spelled copy, SHOPPE.co.
Patricia, thank you so much for dropping so much pure knowledge bombs on the audience. I know everyone got a ton of value out of it.
Thank you so much for having me, Josh. It's been a pleasure.